Welcome and shalom to everyone. This is our continuing presentation on our YouTube series called The Bible and What's It Really About. This particular episode is something I have been desiring to do for some time. I had told you in our last video that we would start this, and it is entitled Matthew 24, Israel, the Fig Tree, and the Signs of Our Times. I'd like to state first that this is for Christians and my Jewish friends as well, because the misunderstanding between our two sides could not be greater. However, I would like to say this. After spending 20 years on and off in Israel, as well as the United States and several other cultures, I have a foot in both sides, and it's in this respect that I have allegiance to neither of your parties. My point of view is simply sharing the word of Yah with everybody. Now, when we take a look at this, Daniel, Ezekiel, Zechariah to the book of Revelation, I know most of my Jewish friends don't know almost anything about their own old covenant prophets, Daniel, Ezekiel, Zechariah, and they definitely are not quite sure what is happening in the so-called Christians' book of Revelations. But I'd like to say this, neither do the Christians. And the only answer I can give you is you haven't been taught, because rabbi and pastor today are living this collective, politically correct, everything is fine as long as you don't touch my nose and I believe what I want and don't dislike me. Well, you may not love me, but I love the Father's Word, and this is the purpose of this video, to share what you're not getting from your own churches and synagogues. Extra baggage. I know a lot of you Christians are carrying a lot of false doctrines that you've picked up in your denominations over the last few hundred years, whereas the Jewish people can trace their lineage back essentially 4,000 years, and they have a lot that we can learn on. I've certainly learned this myself. And after doing tours in Israel with almost every denomination I can think of, including Israelis, I've come to see that the misunderstanding and lack of information is very profound. The house. As we start Matthew 24, it's going to begin with what is known in Christendom as the temple. But if we were to go back in time, we would see that it's really the house, and you're going to find out whose house it really is. A lot of you Christians are waiting for the Jews to rebuild their third temple. In a way, that's a silly question, because if you were to be in Israel today and talk to the average Israeli, they could care less. Matter of fact, it's only a very small, concerted group of Jewish people, Israelis and Americans and other Jews, that are interested in trying to build the third temple. Most Israelis today, what I have seen last time I was in Israel, are quite hard on their own Jewish religious people. They don't take them very seriously. Matter of fact, what they had to say about them, I was kind of shocked myself. So there's a lot of estrangement here. Includes that in this country as well, with the Christians and the secular society. Again, I have no religious position. I'm in the middle, and it's in this respect that I'm trying to show people what has always been there in an overview. And it can only begin at the beginning. In a sense, Matthew 24 is the greatest summary in the scriptures that brings it all together from Bereshit to Revelation in what I call the great summary chapter. Thereby, I want you to follow us as we go on tour, not in a religious tour. I only do scriptural tours, but to find out, why is Israel the fig tree? What is the significance of this? And what are the signs that I can show you, particularly my Israeli friends, to show where we are today and the relevancy of this and Revelation and Zechariah and Ezekiel and Daniel, all to what is happening today and where we are going tomorrow. So come with me today on this safari and see what simply is there, and you make this decision yourselves. Welcome to Jerusalem, Yerushalayim. This is a real bird's eye shot looking west over the Mount of Olives from an airplane's point of view. As we look at the city of Jerusalem right here, there's actually two cities, as a lot of old cities are. You have the old city of Jerusalem, which walls run like this and over about like here and down around here through the Kidron Valley. This is the New Jerusalem over in the western portion, but this is the old city. Suffice it to say, it's about a half a mile square. This being the south side, that being the north, and we're looking at it through the west over the Mount of Olives. They call this the Mount of Olives, obviously, because it has olive trees on it. At one point, it would have been a lot more olive trees, but through the years, Jewish people have been preferring the burial site here, and they've kind of taken over a lot of the area right here with graves. Don't ask how much it costs to be buried there, as it's prime real estate. It would kill you to know. Either way, we're looking at Jerusalem right here. I used to live in Bethany, which is on the backside of the Mount of Olives, and to get to this point of view, I would hike up the road from there, and if you look at the bottom of the screen, this is the road that cuts right through Bethphage. Remember where Jesus, Yeshua, got his donkey. I was walking through here one time and I saw a donkey tied up to a beat-up BMW. This being a Palestinian community right here. Most Israelis don't go here. They don't feel so comfortable. However, you'll find a lot of tourists roaming around, the Christian tourists that is. And as I used to do tours in Israel on and off for 20 years, I'm going to give you something what I know. A great place to stay is right over here. It's called the Mount of Olives Hotel. It's run by Palestinians. Kamal is the owner. Ibrahim is his son. Either way, they're good guys, and it's much cheaper, and the view looking down on the city is really excellent. This particular site here is an interesting thought. It's called the Chapel of the Ascension. It's kind of mixed with a Muslim mosque these days, and Christian busloads come up here by the hundreds, and all you have to do is pay the Palestinians $2, and you can go inside these walls and see Jesus's footprint in the cement. Actually, it's not Jesus's footprint, it's somebody's, but I guarantee you it's not Jesus's. And why and how do I know that? Because it tells us in Luke 24 that he ascended from Bethany. That's down the road, another 3/4 of a mile there. So I know that for a fact. Even though, either way, as we continue our little tour over here, we come to another religious site on the corner here. This is another Catholic site. It's called Pater Noster, and they must have about 100 murals in tile of Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, donated from many countries around the world. The only problem I find with it, they never tell you what his name is. Across the street from here, you have a Catholic convent. I knew the woman who used to help the nuns here. She was actually the daughter of the proprietor. He has a donkey, and sometimes I let my tourists ride his donkey. It's better than paying $5 for the camels, which are over here. As we make our way down Palm Sunday Road, which the Christians allege this is it right here, we come to the corner right here. There's a cave here called the Tomb of Malachi and Haggai, and for $2 you can pay the Muslims and you can go inside, but they're not there today. Matter of fact, they haven't been there for several thousand years. Either way, our tours normally start from here and we work our way down the Mount of Olives. If I don't like my tours, I start from the bottom and we work our way up. Either way, the tour begins here, and as we are looking down, we start to see that there's a lot to be said here. This is, of course, the Muslims' Dome of the Rock, the El Harim Sharif, and the El Aqsa Mosque right here. The Israelis have their western wall on their side right here. And when the Crusaders took the city the first time, they broke through the city walls somewhere around here. And they decided that where they broke in was King David's palace. However, we found out much later on that Mount Zion and the old city of David is actually over here. Even the Israelis didn't know about that 100 years ago. So we start to see immediately in this presentation that there's a big confusion between what the religious like to believe and really what is taking place. Nonetheless, as we make our way down the Mount of Olives, the history on this is quite profound. We see in Luke 19, Jesus, Yeshua, I prefer, but that's much closer to his name, wept as he came upon the city. Well, 1,000 years before Yeshua, David, fleeing from Absalom, his son, which had usurped the throne, came up the Mount of Olives with a contingent of people still loyal to him, and he wept over the city as well. So what is taking place here is a lot of historical evidences, things that have happened in the past which have a tendency to repeat. Indeed, this idea of a house divided onto itself, we're going to see from the very beginning of Genesis, Bereshit, right to the very end. Either way, the search for today is for significance and now focusing in on where would be the temple, as many of you are interested in this. However, almost nobody can agree where it is. A lot of people like to believe it's right in the middle. And there is definitely schools of thought that the original temple was located here, here, here. However, what we're going to start to see is if we go back to the scriptures, it really tells us where it is, like this. In all my videos, we always like to begin at the beginning. So, with that said, open your scriptures to Genesis, Bereshit 21:31. And it says, "And Abraham planted a grove in Beersheba and called on there the name of Yahweh." Now, I know you Jews are told by your rabbis that you're not supposed to use that name, and the Christians followed suit with this about 200 years after Yeshua, and they don't know the name either. They say the Lord. But we find out that Abraham knew his name quite well. And it's this at Beersheba he is living. And he's calling upon the name of Yahweh. And we pick it up next in chapter 22 and verse 1. And it says, "And it came to pass after these things, Elohim, the Almighty, did tempt Abraham to prove him, and it said unto Abraham, Behold, here I am. And he said, Take now thy son, thy only son, Isaac, son of the promise, whom thou lovest, and get thee to the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell you about." So, He goes from Beersheba, which is a flat desert area, and as it says in your scriptures, he goes up to Jerusalem. You go up to Jerusalem because the elevation rises and rises and rises. Everything is flat in the country except for the Golan compared to Jerusalem. So he goes to Jerusalem. He doesn't know it as Jerusalem. It's called the land of Moriah. And we find out that we're standing on top of the Mount of Olives like we did before, and we're looking out at the future city of Jerusalem. That's south, west, and to our right is the north. We're on the Mount of Olives. And here comes Abraham. He's coming to a land called Moriah. And we find out that this is it. It's called Moriah. And it means the mountain of Yah, which is short for Yahweh. So he goes here and he offers up his son. But the father at the last minute says, wait, I know you love me, spare your son. Of course, this is a shadow picture for what will happen much later on. So he discovers Moriah and he makes his sacrifice. Where did he make the sacrifice on Moriah? We don't know, because if we were to stretch it from here, the beginning of the city of David, way down here, way up to here, where Yeshua was crucified, it's more than a half a mile distance, but it's all the same mountain. Now, we say to ourselves, what is the significance of this? And the significance is, it is the mountain of Yahweh. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, when will it not be the mountain of Yahweh? Moses, after he gets the Israelites out of Egypt, is told in Deuteronomy, I will tell you where the place is, the place that you will set my name when you come into the promised land. King David, 500 years after Moses, will be sitting where? In the city of David, of course. He'll be sitting here, and he decides to number Israel. Satan tempts him to number Israel, and in the process, he will sin in this. Why? Because the Father doesn't want him to number Israel, to know how many men he has, because Yahweh is his strength. Yahweh is his life. And it's in this respect that he doubted the Father and did the natural thing. Found out how many people he could put forth into the field against the Philistines, because they just kept attacking and attacking. Even Job, his general, said, don't number Israel. He numbers them, and because of this sin, 70,000 Israelis will fall because of this. The prophet Gad comes to David and says, look, you blew it. I give you 3 deals. 1, you can run from your enemies for so much time. 2, you can suffer sickness yourself. 3, you can lose some people in Israel. So he chooses the third one. 70,000 people fall because of this. In the process, he finally says, I am guilty. I am the one that has sinned. Please, Father, forgive me. Take out your wrath on me. That's when the Father shows him the threshing floor of Onan, who was a Jebusite. He says, sacrifice there, and the plague stops. But the positive thing is he finds out where to build the future house of Yah. Whose house could it possibly be? Yah's house. 1,000 years down the line, Yeshua comes walking down the Mount of Olives from Bethany and goes to the house. And the religious leaders are arguing what makes the house holy. Is it the altar or is it the gold on the altar? He says, you people have mixed it all up. It's not the altar. It's not the gold. It is the name. The name of this house is the house of Yahweh. This is what makes it holy. The house itself is named after the Father. It was built by Solomon to house the name that you rabbis have had and lost. Yeshua brought it back, and our priests down the line lost it again. So, this is the story, and the significance of Moriah is that it is the mountain of Yah, and you cannot erase it. You can defile it, but you cannot erase it, and it's always there. And this is what the story, the old story, is all about, and it's coming full circle, and the name is coming back in these days.